Members, guests, I would like to extend you a heartfelt welcome to the Valley. Also, a special welcome to our distinguished guest, Louise Jett. We hope you find this platform today interesting and very informative.
Thank you, Mike, for that warm welcome. And I'd also like to welcome each of you and open with a quote this morning, being the first Sunday of Black History Month. This quote is from Dr. Mae Jemison. Mae is an American engineer, a physician, and former NASA astronaut. She became the first Black woman to travel into space when she served as a mission specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour. And Dr. Jemison's quote is, "Never be limited by other people's limited imaginations." And to our visitors, if you would like to receive Valley news or further information from us, please provide your contact information in the chat feature found at the bottom of your screen. Susquehanna Valley Ethical Society is a community of all walks of life that learns and grows together through shared values, doing good, and nurturing the human spirit. We are a safe and courageous place in which members can build a community of friends, find inspiration and purpose, provide moral education for their children, celebrate seasons and life events, and clarify their world views. I would like each of us here this afternoon to please hold in your hearts and in your thoughts Sean Sylvester Williams, a member of SVES. Sean's husband, Elle Miller, contacted me late last evening to tell me that Sean has suffered a heart attack. It happened yesterday afternoon. He was driving at the time. The car was totaled. Sean is in the ICU. I do not know which hospital Sean is in, and Elle is keeping me posted on Sean's condition, though I haven't heard from Elle yet today. So I will keep everybody posted and even send out some maybe an address that if you feel moved to send a card, hopefully it will be a card for a speedy recovery that we can offer Sean through his recuperation. And now Phyllis is going to share some announcements.
Well, tomorrow, which is Monday, of course, February 7th at 7 o'clock, we're having our Ethical Action Committee meeting. This is meeting is open to anyone who's interested in joining the Ethical Action Committee. If you're interested, contact info@SusquehannaValleyEthicalSociety.org to get the Zoom link. This Thursday, February 10th at 7 o'clock on Zoom, we're having a brand new ethical action program is now in session. We're excited to be joining forces with Vanguard Fitness to improve our ethical living through a healthy living. Join professional certified fitness trainer, our own Brian Johnson, for a half-hour session of stretching, bending, and exercise to promote wellness in our lives. So again, contact our info@SusquehannaValleyEthicalSociety.org to get the link for that. I've attended a couple times, and Brian gives us a good workout, so it's a good time. And next Sunday, February 13th, our platform, of course, is at 1:30. We have Dr. J. Exodus Hooper will address the theme Fellowship and Friendship.
Thank you, Phyllis, very much. And yes, so the theme for February is fellowship and friendship. And being the 13th of the month, with Valentine's Day being the day after, I can only assume that there's going to be some message of love in Jay's talk with us next Sunday. And why does Susquehanna Valley Ethical Society meet each Sunday? We meet to deepen our sense of the meaningfulness of life. We meet to shine light on the ideas with which we guide our choices. We meet together to give us courage to take the higher path and to get to know one another over time, an appreciation of each one's unique and incomparable worth. And together, we work for a world where love and justice cross all borders. And our statement of affirmation, and for anyone, if you have this memorized, please feel free to join in. We affirm the worth, dignity, and uniqueness of every human being. And now I'm going to be turning over this part of the program to our resident poet, Olivia.
Does someone else is sharing a poem too?
Yes, Laura is going to
Yes,
share
Laura will be.
after you.
Okay. Because I was going between two poems, so I was like, maybe.
No, go ahead. If you want to
Actually,
read.
can I pause for a quick second? Look, and I know this will be on the Zoom community and Facebook community, so I'm plugging in. This is actually great that we're actually having this moment, because even though Olivia is our resident poet, I do want to plug in too that as Vanguard Fitness is happening, we are working on having a poetry session with Olivia. Those dates are going to be coming soon. Olivia has agreed to offer at least once a week, or I think it's twice a month. We're getting to a place where we're figuring that out. But just know that we are going to be exercising our poetic being. And I think that is just something very beautiful to share. If you are not familiar with definitely Black poets and Black scholarship, and how Black women actually engage oftentimes in the poetic, this is such an important way of exploring our own being through other people's stories. And I want to just basically point that out, that this is also a great moment for us to see why it is important for, yes, maybe Olivia to present today, but also to share in the worth and the talent of also Laura, who has also experienced it. So even though it hasn't happened as a workshop, please prepare your mind, your heart, and your body, and also your own creative self to engage in that kind of process. So that's what I want to plug in for our community, in addition to our virtual community beyond us. So we're gonna throw it in. Olivia, you go ahead, and then Laura will definitely go next.
Okay. Yeah, so I would love for all of y'all to join poetry sessions. This poem, I think before I read a poem on forgiveness. And I made this for a class. We had to make a sermon, a Black worship sermon, and they asked me to write a poem on forgiveness. So I wrote that poem, but as I went up to do the poem, I didn't say that I wrote the poem. And so afterwards they asked me who wrote the poem. And I was like, me, and they told me, put your name on your poem. And one of the people in my class was like, can I put my name on your poem? And that kind of inspired a poem. So, And it ended up in this whole moment where I was like writing this poem, in response to him saying that, and then wondering if I would ever share my poetry like in that way. And then he walks over to me, says the same thing, and I share the poem. And it was a whole like moment of just the way that the concoction of the universe can bring us into alignment of things. So this is called Sign the Dotted Line. Can you put your name on my poem? Are you vibing to this? Does it resonate? My name's not there, no original thought here, just recycled feelings transferred to pain. To page, I place the stage to plane, space and time captured to save, to review through the body. If yours starts to ping, then we're on the same pain. The same page points to a cage. The door was open and we occupied space, together behind bars human made. Human occupied, the pen was solace. Reminder of the shared experience, we're not too far to roam. Closer than two thieves charged and processed through. An ecosystem of relational views, a symphony of relational blues. Can you put your name on my poem? Are you vibing to this? Does it resonate? Have two souls brush past to participate? Then I've got a line to sign. It's time two souls co-create. So yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Laura, bring us in to your space.
Okay. Oh, I have this weird background here, don't I?
It's-
Freaky. So I wrote this in 5th grade, and it was when we were actually studying slavery. And it was my first introduction to all of those ideas. And it hit me hard. And I came up with this poem, and my teacher actually submitted it to some journal, and it was published. It's called The Underground Railroad. The North Star, it seems so near, but yet so far. Our demands, our fading pride. How long do we have to hide these feelings that are left inside, to starve, to fall apart and die? When that star comes in the sky, we fight in our minds to have our freedom of many kinds. And then when we've all escaped, the memories that we have had will be locked and draped, never to be found.
That was 5th grade?
Yeah.
Honey, what an education. My grandmother would say, what an education, honey, you got. That was good. You would have been in the newspaper. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Laura. Thank you. And thank you, Olivia. I love how our community feels so comfortable sharing. Yes, our creativity is amazing.
I don't think Laura was ever much of a child. She felt everything so intensely.
Well, when I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher wrote on my report card, Laura has a keen sense of justice.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And again, I want to welcome Louise Jett to our Valley Ethical Society this afternoon. Louise is an ethical culture leader in training, or we might also say emerging leader. That's right. That's what it is. You're right. And she's also she's a member of the Ethical Society of St. Louis. Now, communicating is Louise's specialty. She's a storyteller and an educator. Flexible and strategic, she approaches challenges with optimism and enthusiasm. She's a social media expert and scholar who spreads awareness of her society, Ethical Society of St. Louis, as their social media manager. A humanist, she values free thought and questioning. Devoted to behaving in a way that elicits the best in others, Louise believes all people have worth and deserve to be treated with respect. As a media specialist and faculty member at Lewis and Clark Community College, she serves as a mentor and friend to students and co-workers alike. Nothing makes her happier than sharing knowledge and learning from others. And I know many of you remember Louise. She also loves to play games. And she was with us a number of months ago for an afternoon of online games. So welcome, Louise.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join your congregation this morning. Again, I'm so happy to be with you all. And my cat, of course, is going to start pestering me right now, but we'll get through it. So at an early age, I searched for a deeper meaning, which led me to being a devout Christian in a family of atheists. I distinctly remember asking my mom where my great Aunt Rosalie went when she died. And mom said something to the effect of, some people believe she went to heaven and others think she's just gone. And I remember I said, what do we believe? I was like horrified. And mom said, well, we believe that she's just gone, but she'll live in our memories. And the thought of being just gone made me panic. There had to be more to life than that, right? It was 1987. I was just 11 years old, and facing my own mortality, I became deeply religious and I started attending church all on my own. I was the youngest due-paying member of my small town Baptist church. I remember walking my dues down the church aisle and tucking my envelope in the steeple of a little miniature church that served as a piggy bank of sorts for collections. And I felt like such an adult. I was curious and studious. I was a great congregation member. I read my Precious Moments Bible, well, religiously, and I asked a ton of questions. Lots of them were about dinosaurs. I was a pretty innocent 11-year-old, and I loved going to church, especially when there was music. In fact, I would perform solos and belt out hymns in all the local churches, which were, of course, all Christian. Old Rugged Cross was always my favorite, and I still envision my little girl self belting out the cryptic words of the gospel song so sincerely and so seriously. I clung to that old rugged cross. The love I had for Jesus was powerful. I wanted to walk in love just like Jesus Christ. I even wrote him poetry. After singing at the local Pentecostal church and seeing them filled with what I thought was the Spirit of Christ, I thought I had found my people. Now, I find this notion ridiculous now, but I was totally mesmerized by their behavior. I admired their zealousness, and I wanted very much for the Lord to fill me so that I could speak in tongues too. But it never happened for me because I wanted it to be real. It had to be real, and it simply is not. Eventually, I was literally expelled from the church during a service for quietly giggling with a toddler who was playing peekaboo with me in her frilly pink Sunday dress. The preacher stopped the sermon and told me to leave. He wasn't nice about it either. I remember walking down the row between the pews, but this time feeling like a pariah. My head was hung low. By the time I walked the short way home, I had become irate with the preacher, and all the doubts I had been repressing came bubbling up. At the time, I was devastated. I had devoted every Wednesday night and Sunday morning to the church, and I no longer felt welcome there. I spent 3 years of my short life as a part of this community, and not one person in the congregation stood up for me or asked me to stay. Looking back, I realized the pastor was constantly frustrated with me because even through all the indoctrination, I asked lots of questions. I refused to speak in tongues unless it was real. And probably more importantly, I was never able to convince my parents to join the church. He pressured me to pressure them to join a lot. And I could so clearly see the game he was playing. The jig was up. I was nearly 14 years old, and the experience had led me to become an atheist. Shedding my religion was painful. I still felt a resounding love for people and nature, but I became overwhelmed with a sense of betrayal and hopelessness. Coupled with other devastating personal events, the loss of my faith sent me into a deep depression. Being a teenager is hard without the loss of faith. The impermanence of the life that I was living was maddening. The randomness of it all made no sense. Thankfully, I was an avid reader and artist, and I would stay up all night reading, drawing, thinking. I also wrote a lot. I recall an essay published in my high school newspaper in which I compared Jesus to Santa Claus, and the vice principal, normally not a fan of mine, called me into her office. She thanked me for writing the essay and said it made her reconsider the stories we tell ourselves and our children. Even though she didn't understand my atheism, she appreciated my insight. I don't remember how or why I picked up Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions, but it resonated with me completely. Even as a brooding teenager, I laughed out loud at Vonnegut's storytelling. He was speaking to me, and his words were medicine for my soul. One of the main characters of the novel, science fiction writer Kilgore Trout, thought his life was over for him and that he would never make a difference or live up to his full potential. He considered himself an artist who devoted his entire life to the search for truth and beauty and didn't find doodly squat. He felt his life was pointless, and then he became a distinguished scholar in the field of mental health. And in a way, he ended up on top very late in his life. The loss of my faith had made my life feel meaningless, and I had searched for my Lord and Savior, but like Trout, I had found doodly squat. Still, the possibility of being impactful gave me hope. And for me, through various plot lines throughout the book, Vonnegut was presenting a clear message. Whatever the state of one's existence, accepting your circumstances is easier if unencumbered by fantasies of divine intervention. For example, at one point, Vonnegut presents himself to Trout as his creator in the book. The author writes himself into the book and extends an apple to his creation. And Trout recognizes the apple as a symbol of knowledge and liability and consequences of discovery. And even after his newfound success and all the lessons he's learned, he shrinks from the gift and wishes for youthful rejuvenation instead. He cries out to Vonnegut, his creator, "Make me young, make me young, make me young." And the first time I read this, I laughed out loud. Even as a teenager, I knew not even youth could save us from ourselves. And Vonnegut understood this too. Youth doesn't protect us from our mythological archetypes. In fact, it is when we are young that myths are presented and perpetrated. It is only when we are older that we can return to our experiences of our youth to understand and enhance our understanding of the present. The novel gave me perspective. Even without life eternal, my life was worth living. Waiting on a savior was futile. I should instead empower myself with knowledge. If anyone was going to make a difference in my life, it was going to be me. There's so much more to the novel Breakfast of Champions. In fact, I think the novel is a call for us to have a good, hard look in the mirror and recognize the reality of racism in America. Vonnegut explicitly ties the brutality of America's brand of slavery to the systematic racism and the low quality capitalism still at play in our society today. He illustrates a dehumanization that allows people to inflict harm and violence on Black bodies. He points to the injustice of the mass incarceration of Black people in our prison industrial complex, prisons that still practice legal forms of slavery, by the way. Indeed, many of the problems addressed in Breakfast of Champions still exist in our society. Another example would be one of the main characters' need to convince himself and others that he is not racist when he explicitly is. I think many of us may have met someone like that. While Vonnegut's representation of race and racism is often difficult to read, he is calling attention to the systematic and institutionalized racism present in American society, which is very often just as offensive and forward. He reveals the ugliness of racism in America, and in doing so, advocates for the social equality and justice, regardless of skin color. I highly encourage you to read Breakfast of Champions if you haven't already. The book served as a gateway for me, the first of many books Vonnegut wrote that I devoured, each one full of humor, humanness, kindness, criticism, and hope. He reinforced my inclinations to learn from others despite their flaws or differences, and he helped me accept my imperfections as well. When I started to research Vonnegut to learn more about him as a person, I discovered his connection to secular humanism. The American Humanist Association awarded him the Humanist of the Year Award in 1992, and he served as AHA's honorary president from 1992 to 2007. Vonnegut came from a long line of free thinkers. He once said in an interview, "My ancestors who came to the United States a little before the Civil War were atheists, so I'm not rebelling against organized religion." But when asked if he thought organized religion can make anybody happier, Vonnegut said, "Oh, of course, lots of comforting lies are told in church. Not enough, but some." He summed up his humanism in a famous quote you may have heard. He once wrote, "Humanists try to behave decently and honorably without any expectations of rewards or of punishments in the afterlife. The creator of the universe has been unknown to us so far. We serve as well as we can to the highest abstraction of which we have some understanding, which is our community." While most of Vonnegut's novels focus on individuals, in one of my favorite books, Cat's Cradle, he stresses the importance of community by inventing an outlawed religion, Bokononism. Bokononists believe if you find your life tangled up with somebody else's life for no very logical reasons, that person may be a member of your Karass. We find the people of our Karass by accident, but we stay with them by choice. Those people with which we share arbitrary connections, they're actually in our grand falloon, a sort of false Karass. According to Bokononism, examples of grand falloons would be any political party, business, company, or any nation, anytime, anywhere. Talk about anti-nationalism. To Bokononists, liking the same sports teams or living in the same country is meaningless. As one of the Bokononists saying goes, "If you wish to study a grand falloon, just remove the skin of a toy balloon." However, your Karass helps you cultivate meaning in your life. It is your team that helps you live your values while enriching your community. The Bokononists call this doing God's will without ever discovering what you're doing. The first sentence of the books of Bokonon is this: "All of the true things I'm about to tell you are shameless lies." Vonnegut warns his readers, anyone unable to understand how a useful religion can be founded on lies will not understand this book either. But for me, I would eventually discover my religious humanism to be one founded in truth. And I found my Karass in ethical culture. All the other previous churches had turned out to be grand falloons, and I turned out to be an ethical humanist. I had always been. I hadn't lost any religion. I had finally found mine. Because unlike Vonnegut, I wouldn't say my humanism is of a secular variety. And while Bokononism was unable to save the earth from destruction in Cat's Cradle, I honestly believe ethical humanism can. While all flavors of humanism affirm that human beings have the right and responsibility to give meaning and shape to their own lives, ethical humanism is clear about the essential role that ethical principles play in human relationships. As the American Ethical Union states, ethical societies serve as religious congregations in which members can build a community of friends, find inspiration and purpose, and provide moral education for their children while celebrating seasons and life events and clarifying their worldviews. All of this without the comforting lies or belief in the supernatural. The more I became involved with ethical culture, the more I realized I had truly found my people. The members of our movement support me as I strive to live my values. And even without knowing who ethical culture founder Felix Adler was, I had pretty much always tried to behave in a way that elicited the best in others and then thereby the best in myself. Ethical culture just gave me the words to express how I had always felt in my heart. Our core values spoke to my strong desire for social justice. And I could see how ethical action can make the world a more fair and just place for all people. The more I learned about ethical culture, the more I realized I wanted to be a leader with a capital L, a professional ethical culture leader. Leaders fill the roles of religious clergy within the ethical culture movement. They meet the pastoral needs of members, perform ceremonies, and serve as spokespeople for the congregation. I want to help spread humanistic values throughout space and time, connecting others with the resources, information, and support they need to not only live meaningful lives, but to also further the growth of ethical humanism. I appreciate that in order to be a humanist, that I do not have to embrace comforting lies. I appreciate that each of us creates our own flavor of humanism. I am not forced to behave according to dogma, and I can be accepting of all faiths and none, and appreciative of all ways of living that do not infringe on the rights of others. There is no one right way to live. And I understand that we are stronger together. As a leader, I want to meet people on common ground and build communities of support and love through inclusion and communication. I truly love people, even the difficult ones, even the ones I don't agree with. Although it can be an unpopular opinion, I truly believe everyone deserves to be treated fairly and kindly, and I can learn from everyone, even those I don't agree with. I speak to you today as a leader in training, who's grateful to the National Leader Council and the American Ethical Union for acceptance into the training program. Sometimes I envision myself serving as a leader of an ethical society or as a humanist chaplain at a college. As long as I'm playing a role instrumental in spreading ethical culture and safeguarding its future, I will be happy. Vonnegut once said of the American Humanist Association that we have an organization, a boring business, is to let others know we are numerous. We would prefer to live our lives as humanists and not talk about it or think about it more than we think about breathing. But we have to talk about it. It is too important not to. Sharing our humanism could be transformative for our world. I believe as ethical humanists, we should express our beliefs and values. We should lead by example and publicly proclaim our humanism. Representation is important. What if Vonnegut hadn't identified as a humanist? What if the AHA didn't recognize him as Humanist of the Year? Would I have discovered or explored the life stance on my own? I honestly don't know. I do know that I'm grateful for Vonnegut, even though his humanism doesn't look exactly like mine. I appreciate all the other humanists, known and unknown, dead and living, who trust the best in human thinking while actively living their values. These are my people, my Karass, so to speak. We are focused on justice equity, and equality, even though we may have different opinions on how to get there. In fact, it is our diversity that strengthens us. I remain optimistic about our potential and open to the endless possibilities the future may hold for our movement and our global community. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to further exploring this topic with you all.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you so much. And so Louise has said that she is able to stay on with us. So after we have the closing, anyone who wants to stay on and have conversation with Louise and among ourselves, please do feel comfortable in doing that. And I typically do turn off the recording at that point in our program, so everyone does not, feel encumbered to share thoughts. So with that, Louise is going to share closing with us.
I have a slideshow for everything. I think this is perfect. So these closing words are so perfect for your theme of friendship. And as I think of being in relationship with others and cultivating a meaning in my life, I keep coming back to ethical culture founder Felix Adler and his belief that our moral development is tied to helping others morally develop, and that moral unity is the divinity in all of us. And one of the most effective and meaningful ways to foster unity and friendship is through relationships of empathy and genuine kindness. We can learn from everyone, and all of us should be treated fairly and kindly. Adler often expressed his belief that every human has worth and all of us deserve dignity. He greatly valued interpersonal relationships. And I love this quote. It's kind of an obscure Adler quote that you don't hear that much. But in 1905, Adler wrote in his book, The Religion of Duty, "Not everyone is rich enough to have a picture gallery in their house with portraits in it by the old masters or by the new. But everyone should have in their heart a picture gallery in which are hung portraits of their friends. They should be constantly busy retouching these portraits, adding a shade here and a light there. As experience teaches, they should paint them lovingly, not uncharitably. They should visit this gallery often to contemplate the portraits that are hung there." This beautiful imagery, Adler's words call to my mind, is that of lifelong friendships, family members, and even community members like you, my fellow ethical culturists. So I ask you, is there room in the gallery of your heart for a friend or two, or possibly even more? If so, I encourage you to hang some new portraits in there. Because I agree with Adler when he said, "The unique personality, which is the real life in me, I cannot gain unless I search for the real life, the spiritual quality in others. I am myself spiritually dead unless I can reach out to the fine quality dormant in others. For it is only with the God enthroned in the innermost shrine of the other that the God hidden in me will consent to appear." I will note, he wrote God with a lowercase g. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you. And with that, I'll stop the recording.